Hi, I'm Johnny Hazel, and today I'm going to talk about day 2 of the Shore Classic. Now, I think that day 2 events were better than day 1, but there were some negatives and some positives. So the negatives, let's start with them first. I think the production value of the streaming was not very good. I'd give it probably 6 out of 10, considering I paid nearly 3 times more to watch this than I did the Giants live shows. I think that I was slightly ripped off. I felt like the commentating audio was just freaking abysmal. It nearly blew my speakers at one point on my TV, because one minute you can't hear anything that Terry Hollis is saying, the next minute it's this fuzzy, distorted yelling, and it just makes the whole thing very... I ended up turning the volume off. I just muted my TV and watched it without any commentating, because it was just getting to the point that it was just unbearable. And the same with the MC. At times you can't hear what the MC was saying. You just couldn't hear anything, and then the next minute it was just this sort of yelling down the microphone. So I think the audio mixing was freaking atrocious when you compare it to the likes of Shore's competitors like Giants Live, World's Strongest Man, the Arnold Strongman Classic, World's Ultimate Strongman. The production value was poor. It was below standard, especially if you're charging someone pretty much $15 for access to this. You would expect better. Not necessarily Super Bowl, but you would expect better. These small little amateur things to be ironed out. They're very small little issues that really shouldn't be happening at this level. So that was one thing. I also felt like the advertising was just lazy. I mean, I'd seen the same advert like 60 times in 2 days. I understand that, Brian needs to give his sponsors time on air and give them value for money for investing in the whole thing. And I know Brian wants to promote his brands, but it just got lazy. It was like the same advert for 2 days. It was just like, seriously, can we do something else? I mean, can't we get back to the sport and maybe do some highlights from Strongman, have Brian talking about things about his career, just something more interesting, more relevant to the sport. So I felt like that was really toxic. But in terms of another good thing, I thought the camaraderie from between athletes and the referees and the athletes was fantastic. I like the sort of patriot feel, the patriotism of the whole thing. I think there's nothing wrong with that at all. And I think that the relationship between the audience and the athletes was really strong as well. You could feel it, and you could feel like there was a real good energy of just happiness and feeling excited and just feeling close with everyone at the actual show. You could feel like the energy was electric. So I think that was a positive. So now I think it's time to stop talking and move on to the events now. So let's talk about event number 1 on day 2. But before we do that, I think it's important to talk about the refereeing, because the refereeing was very strict on the log medley, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I know some of the athletes were a bit pissed off because they felt like they got reps but they weren't allowed it over the past 2 days of the Shore Classic, but I think that refereeing should be strict. I think Chad did a fantastic job. I believe that was his name. Look at this, for example, the log lift world record by Iron Bibby. I love Iron Bibby. I have nothing against the guy. He's just doing what he can get away with, but this is the log lift world record. Now, if that had happened at the Shore Classic, it would not have been a rep, and it rightly should not be a rep. I mean, he hasn't locked out his elbows, he's at a staggered stance, the weight is not controlled, it's not controlled in the slightest, it's not a rep. But this was given by Giants Live and the referees, which is embarrassing for the sport, because this is not a good rep. If you're looking to set a world record on a global stage and have it go down in history as a world record, it needs to be a real rep. This is not, I repeat, this is not a clean rep. It is not a good rep. And the judges at the Shore Classic, the referees, would not have given this as a clean rep on the log medley, and rightly so. So I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. Now, let's talk about it. So with log medley, the athletes had the flexibility and the autonomy to choose what they wanted to do in a time limit. So, for example, they could maybe do 3 reps on the 380 pounds, 172 kilogram log, or they could just jump straight to the 440 or 200 kilogram and set a few reps on that, or 1 rep, or they could jump to the 410 186 kilogram log and do a rep there, or they could do one of all three. They had like the autonomy to choose what they wanted to do. Now that was really cool because you just didn't know what the athletes were going to come out to do. You'd have someone like Bobby Thompson slowly walk past the first one, and you're like, wow, okay, he's not going to do 380. I believe it's 380. Okay, so he's not going to do... he's going to go right... And it was really fun to watch that. So I like the log medley idea. I also like that the weight was heavy. It should be heavy. These are world-class strongmen. They should be tested. This sort of recent culture of making strongman easier for athletes and making sure it doesn't become what Colin likes to call a fail fest. I think that's wrong. It should be trying. It should be difficult. And maybe some 30-40% of the athletes won't even get a lift. There's nothing wrong with that. Watching the athletes try to get those reps is entertaining in itself. So I actually thought that this was a really good setup, and I think it was the right way, albeit some people might think it was too heavy, but I think this is spot on. It should be in this range for world-class strongmen who are going to get a large chunk of prize money. They should be tested. So this is what the setup looked like, and the refereeing was really strict from that guy in the middle there. He was not letting any bad reps get away, and I think that that's the way it should be. And the refereeing was consistent throughout the whole show, and that's what you want. You want consistency when it comes to these the getting reps. So Trey Mitchell did an exceptional job. He just in a league of his own on this. 2 reps with 200 kilograms, and they were good reps. These weren't shitty reps. These were clean, explosive, strong reps. I was so impressed with his performance when it came to the log. Now Brian Shaw did a very good job with the 186. And again, what I loved about Brian Shaw's second rep on this was the clean was exceptional. It was just so explosive and so, I don't know, it just looked absolutely perfect. So his clean was so executed with such precision that when it came to the press, it was easy. He didn't exert a lot of energy cleaning the log up. So I think that was something to know. Alexei Novikov did a good job, but Alexei kind of went out with having done the maths backstage and knew what he needed to do to finish where he wanted to finish, and he did no more. I believe that was a humongous error because he had more in the tank. So he missed an opportunity maybe to take second, which would have given him some more points. So I think that was strategically a good move, but when it came to the next event and he did so poorly on it, he paid for that decision. So that was one thing. Maxime Boudreau did well. He did the first rep with ease, the 380 pounds, 410 as well. So I think Max did okay. I thought, again, I kind of feel like Maxime Boudreau underperformed pretty much throughout the whole show. I think he could have done better. Just something didn't feel right. Mitchell Hooper did brilliantly. I was really impressed with Mitchell Hooper. He also attempted the top log, the 440 pound log, and he got the clean. He got it up to the chest, but when the press didn't work, but he held that press for like 5-6 seconds in a sort of sticking point, and he didn't get the lockout. But my God, my back hurt. Was in pain just watching it. Just the pressure he put his body under during that attempt to try and get that lockout, but he was unsuccessful. And I think Kevin Fairs did it brilliantly, considering he's the lightest guy. I think he's like 285 pounds. To sort of have that sort of raw strength, it's at that body weight is so impressive. The lightest guy there. Small Stellis did well, and Big Z, we were all happy to see the legend come out and do so well, but he didn't get all the reps that he attempted because the refereeing was very strict. But let's be honest, Big Z has always been, someone who upholds strict refereeing. In the moment he was pissed off, but on reflection I'm sure he'd say that I'm happy that the refereeing was strict and consistent. So Bobby Thompson unfortunately got injured during his attempt on the heaviest one. He injured himself and had to withdraw from the competition completely after this, so that was a bit of a shame. because I like Bobby Thompson, but it looked like a hamstring issue, something that he had before, and he thought he had worked that issue out and that injury was no longer the case, but clearly it was. He's now going to have to go into rehab and take a break from Strongman for a while, which nobody really likes. I'd have to say that Evan Singleton looked wrecked and fatigued from the previous day. I don't think he recovered from that. He looked very tired, very exhausted, very fatigued. Constantine, again, wasn't given a rep. He also looked very tired and fatigued from day one. Looked like he was pretty fried and burnt out. So I think the log was really good. I think some people might say, oh, well, it wasn't entertaining because quite a lot of athletes weren't able to get reps and weren't given reps. And that doesn't make good TV, but I disagree with that, and I've already stated my reasons why. So that's the first event. Now the second event was slightly more interesting in terms of the results. We had a 800-pound frame carry, which then went straight into a arm over arm medley, which was really cool. And that was 700 pounds. The equipment, the engineering of this equipment is absolutely fantastic. It really was. The arm over arm event, piece of equipment was just brilliant. It was fantastic. I mean, you know, the fabrication, the engineering of this piece of equipment was spot on. I really enjoyed that. So this is what the event looked like. I can't share any footage because Shaw Classic will hit me with a copyright, so I'm sorry there's no footage from the event on this, so that's why I can't share anything. So Constantine Janashia for me was one of the standouts. He was very fast on both the arm over arm and the frame carry. Jerry Pritchard did well considering, you know, he's getting older. He really did try his best to try and finish the whole thing. I think Kevin Fairs was also a standout considering, as I say, his weight, in being one of the lightest guys there, one of the smallest guys there. He did amazing. He was blistering really quick, as was Evan Singleton. That's why Evan Singleton's sitting in second, because he was blisteringly quick. Alexei Novikov was the surprise and the shock of the day. Wasn't able to barely even move the frame. He barely even got it a few meters. And just walked off, gave up. I don't know why, but he just couldn't do it. And that's why he should have done better on the log medley, because he didn't even finish. He finished dead last. That's a massive loss of points, humongous loss of points, which basically meant from this point onwards he was not going to win. That really compromised his overall standing at the end of the show. Hooper was very, very quick as well, he on the frame, but when it came to the arm over arm piece of equipment, he struggled with that. He definitely lost some time and ground on that, but in terms of the frame carry, he was very quick and very explosive from the get-go. I must commend that. I think the arm over arm was just not having the experience on the event, the opportunity to practice and train the event. It just looked like it was more about experience that was holding him back rather than the raw strength and capability. Brian was perfect, but Brian should be really good at events like this, finishing fourth. He's very tall, he's got big arms, big levers, so the arm over arm for him, he made it look easy because he's got these humongous long legs and long arms and so much brute strength and so much mass, 425 pounds of body weight. He made it look lightweight, but he lost some time on the frame carry compared to some of the other guys. So I think that all in all, this was a good event. There's not too much to talk about as quite a few didn't finish it, both pieces of equipment, the frame carry and the arm over arm. But for me, the standout of this event would have to be Kevin, because I think considering his height and his weight, to finish third and beat the likes of Brian Shaw, Mitchell Hooper, Constantine Janashia, and just finish behind Evan Singleton, not far off Evan Singleton, who's very good at these sort of events. I think that's a really good performance. So I was very impressed with Kevin. I think that was a brilliant performance. So let's move on to the next event. So the event we were all looking forward to next up is the car leg press. Now, it's about 841 kilograms or 1,850 pounds or 1,850 pounds, as some people say. So the refereeing was very strict. The athlete had to stay in the same position as they were measured up for before the event. During the athlete sort of setup phase, the legs had to be in the same position the feet had to be in the same position, and they had to remain in the same position, seating position, as they started, as they were measured for. So they actually couldn't move around at all, which is why quite a few reps were disallowed during the car leg press. Quite a few athletes had 2+ reps taken off because they were moving out of position. Their feet were moving, they were moving out of the seated position. But it was very difficult for the athletes because they had the knee wraps on, the knee, what do you call it? Yeah, I'll just say knee wraps. So they were kind of stuck, and every time they moved, they were sort of catapulted out of their fixed position that they were measured for. So the taller athletes definitely struggled with this event more than the shorter athletes. They tend to lack in flexibility. They tend to not have that sort of same mobility, especially if they're quite big and muscular. Their mobility and their flexibility is pretty bad, so they definitely didn't look comfortable, the taller guys. The only guy who got it right was Brian Shaw. He was smart about this. He put his feet in a very high position compared to everyone else, which I kind of believe is more glute orientated when you have your feet higher up on the platform on the leg press, and this definitely paid off for him. He was able to get quite a lot of reps. The other athletes didn't apply the same technique, but I think Brian got it right there. I think some of the athletes could have learnt from that. So the refereeing was strict. The event was good. It wasn't as good as I thought it would be. It didn't make as great entertaining television as I thought it would be, but it was fun to see these guys leg pressing a car. I mean, it's so cool. So the standout for me is Kevin Ferres, or Kevin Fairs, as I say. I think he did really well considering the lightest guy there. He got 4 reps. He seemed to be very explosive, very controlled. The other thing about the referees, they were very strict. You couldn't just drop the weight back down. You had to lower the weight in a controlled manner. Some people got called up, some of the athletes got called up on that for just letting the weight drop back to the starting position. It had to be lowered back to the position in a controlled manner. So some athletes lost reps just due to that small little silly mistake. So I think Kevin for me was the standout. Brian Shaw, again, number 2 on my list on this event. He did so well. He just got the technique spot on that gave him that opportunity to win this event. Mitchell Hooper did really well, like he had pretty much been throughout the whole Brian Shaw Classic. He's just got so much raw strength and so much potential. Even though he's not necessarily one of my favourite athletes, you just can't fault his genetic gifts in terms of raw strength and fantastic cardiovascular endurance, considering his size. Now, I think we must commend Jerry Pritchett, although it didn't go to plan. The guy's had lots of hip issues over the years, so an event like this definitely wouldn't have been something he was looking forward to, but he still gave it a go. I also was very impressed with Big Z, Zydrunas Savickas, considering he's 47. He's had both knees have had major surgery. He's had major surgery on both knees over the years, albeit it was quite a while ago. So again, this isn't necessarily an event that something he was probably looking forward to. So the fact that he finished 4th, absolutely amazing, incredible. So for me, it has to be Kevin was the standout in 5th, Zydrunas, and Brian Shaw and Mitchell Hooper. Those guys, to me, were the standout performers on this. Now, Maxime Boudreau actually got really bad cramp before he was just about to start. Luckily, the whistle didn't blow, so he got a chance to get out of the leg press, go behind the curtain, and just kind of get some physio and get that cramp out. So he came back again, but really that would have just thrown him off. So again, another bit of a fuck up from Maxime Boudreau. I don't think it was really his fault, but just didn't look comfortable when he came back to try again, which is not surprising after having incredibly painful cramp. So as I said, the taller athletes definitely did struggle a little bit, weren't as comfortable as the shorter athletes who had better mobility and flexibility. I think Mitchell Hooper did so well because he does have very good mobility and flexibility. He's got good cardiovascular endurance, he's got good stamina, and he's got the raw strength. So I actually thought he was going to win the event. I actually really honestly thought he was going to win comfortably. But Brian pulled it out like you'd expect from him. So the car event was really good. I wouldn't say it was the best event so far, but at least everything went to plan. There was no incidents, no major injuries. The car didn't fall off the leg press, which is something I would have been worried about. So all in all, it was a pretty good event. So going into the final event, it's super close between Brian Shaw and Trey Mitchell. I was really gunning for Trey Mitchell. He's very good at the stones. He's very good at the stones. Probably the best stone lifter in the world right now in Strongman. So it was really close. I had a gut feeling that Trey would beat Brian on the stones, and whoever finished in a better position on the stones would win the Shaw Classic 2022. Firstly, I really like the stone layout, the fact that athletes are facing each other. It's this sort of face-to-face stone lift-off that really increases the intensity of it all. I also like the weights of the stones. I think it was 350 pounds, 375, 400, 425, and 450. I'm always a big fan of heavier Atlas stone runs, especially at the top and the pinnacle of Strongman. I think it's ridiculous when they start lifting all these baby stones. It should be heavy stones. These athletes should have to work for it, and it doesn't matter if maybe 30-40% of the athletes don't finish all stones. That's not a big issue. And the fact of the matter is, some of them weren't able to get the 4th or 5th stones, but they had given it maybe 1 or 2 attempts, which makes great entertaining television, watching people giving it all they have, reaching deep to get that extra strength to try and get that stone up and give it a second attempt, and not giving up and persevering. That's entertainment in itself. So I don't get this concept in modern strongman we've seen over the years, the past 3-4 years, that promoters are petrified of it being a fail fest. They want everyone to finish the event, every athlete, all 10-15 athletes, to finish the event. They don't want anyone not finishing the event. I think that's fucking retarded. So that really annoys me, actually. So I was happy to see, Brian Shaw didn't make this event easy on the athletes. So when we look at the stone performance, everyone, Evan Singleton, let's start with Evan Singleton because that's the standout, right? He just got the tacky wrong. It's a common mistake. Lots of strongman athletes get it wrong. If you don't know about tacky, I'll summarize it. You have to use the right tacky for the right temperature. If you put the wrong tacky on, it basically ends up being just like mush, and you get no grip from it, and it actually ends up hindering your performance. It just slips right out of your hand. It's like putting lube on the stones. It actually makes it more difficult for you to lift the stones than if you just weren't using tacky at all. So if you use the wrong tacky, it will work against you, and you probably won't even be able to get 1 stone. So he did well to at least get a stone. I think the standout was Gabe Pena. That was a really good performance to do all 5 stones. I think the fact that he didn't do the leg press before paid off, because he had some extra strength that he'd saved up, and didn't have to exert too much energy on the leg press. So I think that actually paid off for him, why he got a top 4 finish. Kevin Ferez did really well, to get 4 stones in 25.3 seconds. He did give the 5th stone a go, but it just didn't work out. Maxime Boudreau did well. Again, he did attempt the 5th stone twice, I believe it was twice, but just couldn't get it. Made a few mistakes. Setup was a little bit off, but he did give it a go. Mitchell Hooper, again, standout performance, 5 stones in a very good time. I think that's a very good time personally, considering how heavy the stones were. Alexei Novikov, all the way down there with 3 stones. We're not used to seeing that, albeit he isn't the greatest stone lifter in strongman. He should really be in the top 5, the top 6 on the stones. It just looked like he was off the whole competition after the deadlift onwards. Pretty much after the event 1, the rest, it was all downhill really from there. Just didn't look like he was 100%. As I said in a video I talked about on the Cardiff Giants Live, he actually looked like he had a bit of an injury, a bicep injury. He was very uncomfortable, so I was surprised to even see him at the Shaw Classic. I thought he had a pretty serious injury that would prevent him from even attending, so I was surprised to see him there. So Trey Mitchell won the stones, Brian Shaw 2nd, Mitchell Hooper 3rd, and Gabriel Pena 4th, and Maxime Boudreau 5th. kind of what I was expecting to see, in all fairness. Kevin did well. Konstantin Janashia, a very good stone lifter. I thought he'd do slightly better, but I think 4 stones in 27.1 seconds is a good time. Smork Stellis is actually an incredible stone lifter. I was surprised to see him not in the top 5 or top 6. He's a very good stone lifter, but I just don't think he got it right. So anyway, I think that it was a good stone off. I think the weights was right. I liked the setup. And it was very intense, so I give it a thumbs up on that. So the final standing, Trey Mitchell, I'm sorry, the T's missing there. Trey Mitchell won it, which is back-to-back now wins, second time in a row, back-to-back. Brian Shaw second. I mean, look at that, really close between the two of them. Mitchell Hooper deserved that third place 100%. To me, he has to be probably the standout performer of the Shore Classic 2022. I know he didn't win it, but that doesn't necessarily mean he didn't do well. I think he was a standout performer. He really did a fantastic job. Alexei Novikov fourth. I thought that was good considering it wasn't his best performance. And the same with Maxime Boudreau. I think fifth is respectable. It wasn't the best performance from him. We've seen better. He didn't look comfortable from the get-go, to be honest with you. Now, Kevin Fairs is the second guy I'd like to mention and point out to be an absolute standout performer, considering he's the lightest guy there, one of the shorter guys there. I think to finish 6th is really good, and he wasn't far off from Maxime Boudreau, so he wasn't far off taking 5th. Smork Stellis 7th. Evan Singleton, again an athlete who I was a little bit disappointed with. Maxime Boudreau and Evan Singleton didn't perform as they should. I mean, you can't expect every athlete to be on form every single strongman event, but they should have done better, and they could have done better. But at least Evan Singleton didn't have to withdraw due to injury. He managed to finish all 8 events, which is a big accomplishment in itself. Konstantin Janashia did well to finish in the top 10, but again, he could have done better. He had a few missed opportunities to do better. Now, Big Z coming back, 47 years of age, to finish in the top 10. Brilliant, congratulations, fantastic performance. Bobby Thompson had to withdraw due to what looked like a hamstring injury on the log medley, so that was a bit of a shame. He's been on a roll recently, so that's a big loss for the sport. We won't see him for a while. Gabe Pena, I think, done really well, especially on the stones. That was a standout performance, and the deadlift. Gabriel Rayam did well considering he's still pretty new to the sport. He's still got a lot to learn. And Jerry Pritchard, after not seeing him for a while in Strongman, to come back, did well. And Luke Stoltman, 1 point, had to withdraw very early on, so we really didn't see anything from him at all, to be honest. So I think that the Shore Classic, overall, I'd give it probably an 8 out of 10. I think the things that held it back was just a little bit with the production value of the live stream. The commentary, the audio mixing was just completely off. Sometimes you didn't have any audio at all. I think it was for Jerry Pritchett on the Stone Run. You didn't even have any audio, no sound at all. I think that kind of held it back in terms of the live stream. I think that, the running advertisement was a little bit excessive, the same ads over and over again. There was so many things they could have aired during the breaks and the intervals, and to kind of rely on just rerunning the same advert time and time again was monotonous. But I think the events were fantastic. I can't fault the events. They were brilliant. It's exactly what we, the fans, want to see. We want to see these strongman being tested. We don't want to see the events being too easy, just to appease the promoters so that they don't have what they label to be a fail fest. I think it's perfectly understandable, and it's spot on to have these events test the athletes, and maybe see a few withdraw due to some injuries. But I like that. I like that a lot. I think it should be difficult. So I think the events were spot on. I think the weights were spot on. And I think just the leg press, car leg press was great. I love that sort of innovation. I really enjoyed that. I really like the arm over arm apparatus, the piece of equipment that they used. I love that. The engineering of that, I can really appreciate that. That was fantastic. So I think all in all, it was really good. The events were great. The arena, the location was fantastic. It was a good crowd, a pretty big sellout crowd. I think that was good. And Brian Shaw did a fantastic job, and I hope we see it again. They just need to iron out a few small little errors with the live stream in terms of the audio mixing. But with exception to that, I can't really fault anything else. There's nothing really to fault. I mean, the athlete lineup was fantastic. They got the best of the best, and the reason why is because the athletes trust Brian Shaw, and they also trust that he wants to do this to give back to the sport. And you can see by the prize money, if you research it, that these athletes are going to walk away with a good chunk of money, especially the people in the top 5. It's a good chunk of money. I think Trey Mitchell will get $35,000, maybe even more, for winning. That's freaking good money. That's good. That's him set up for a year. You could live off that for sure. So the athletes obviously want to go. They've got good prize money. They trust Brian Shaw to put on a good show, good events. They trust that he's going to have referees that are going to be strict and consistent, and that sort of trust between him and the athletes encourages them to want to come to these shows and not withdraw last minute because they feel like it's not worth their time. So great stuff. I look forward to the next Shaw Classic. I'm sorry there was no footage in any of these videos that I've done. I got a slap on the wrist for that. It was an accident. Unfortunately, I uploaded a video by accident on one time. I was actually meant to keep it unlisted. It was meant to be private just for me because my phone ran out of storage space. Just a bit of an error on my behalf, but I couldn't share any footage. And if you want to see any footage, you can always go to the Shaw Classic and maybe rewatch the live stream. Alternatively, I'm sure Brian Shaw will upload highlights soon to social media when he gets time, his team get time. So anyway, thanks for watching this video. Share your thoughts below on what you thought of the Shaw Classic. Did you enjoy it? What would you rate it out of 10 from 1 to 10? 10 being the best, 1 being terrible. And who was your favourite athlete? Who was the standout performer for you? Just one. And who was probably the biggest letdown of the performance out of all the athletes? Who performed the worst? Who did you think really let themselves down? And share that all below in the comments. Thanks for watching. Have a great day, and I will be creating more Strongman content too soon, so make sure that you do subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.